the Art Box Podcast, where creativity lives, but more importantly, where stories are told. I'm your host, Steve, and here we believe every piece of art carries a story, and every artist has one worth sharing. From theater and song to archaeology and to our public lands, we explore the many ways creativity shows up in the world around us. Because I'm always happy to view a work of art, but I'm never fully satisfied until I've heard the story behind it. That's what we're all about, unpacking the journeys, the moments, the people, and the meaning that bring art to life. So whether you're an artist, a storyteller, or simply curious, pull up a chair. Let's open the box.
Oh, effortlessly beautiful. That's Venus and being you.
Well, Judi, nice to have you here, and welcome to the Art Box.
Thank you.
You've worn so many creative hats: author, speaker, artist, television host, teacher. Did all those paths grow naturally from one another, or did they arrive in completely different chapters of your life?
They kind of arrived in completely different chapters of my life. All I wanted to be was a writer. When I was growing up, I wanted to write for newspapers. I wanted to maybe be a reporter. And then I wanted to write books. And I very fortunately in high school was hired by the city newspaper to do the teenage program on the newspaper. I got to have a column of my own and report what was happening on the scene with the teenagers. And so that was a good start. And then I came to Las Vegas to be a journalist. And when I got here, my job didn't wait for me, so I didn't have a job. And I took a job as a secretary. And in the meantime, I worked for some of the smaller newspapers around back then. There was one called the Panorama, and they gave me my own column, and I wrote for them for quite a long time, number of years. And then I went ahead and I worked at a lot of other jobs. I worked at the Nevada test site. I was a flight attendant for American Airlines. I was a secretary for a lot of different companies. And I just didn't really know what I was doing. And then I was a secretary at a model agency, and I got hired to go out on modeling jobs as well as doing secretarial work. And one day the Montgomery Ward's department stores called and said they were looking for someone to be Wendy Ward to represent the department store. And I was sent out on the interview, and they hired me, and I became Wendy Ward. So for the next couple of years, I taught little children how to be well groomed, how to do their skincare, how to brush their teeth, how to walk, how to sit, how to stand, how to be polite, have good social graces, table manners. And I did that for a couple of years, and my program became the number one Wendy Ward program in the United States out of 500 Montgomery Ward stores. And so I got full of myself and started thinking, oh, I could do this for myself. So I opened my own finishing school and model agency, which I had here in Las Vegas for 20 years. And we were very, very successful with that. We helped the Las Vegas Convention Authority bring the convention business to Las Vegas. And so we worked not only as professional models doing fashion shows and photo shoots, we also trained our people to be spokespeople to work in the convention booths and to sell products and to work in the information booths and thank people for coming to Las Vegas and help with registration and all that stuff. And so that just kind of was my life. And I had no idea that I had any kind of other talents. And I was speaking to promote the Wendy Ward program and then speaking to promote my own business. And then one day someone said, why don't you be a professional speaker? And I thought, what? You know, what do professional speakers do? And they said, go to the National Speakers Association and find out. So I did, and I found out that I was charging far too little money for the speaking I was doing, and that I could probably do better. So I went on into public speaking and promoted myself as a speaker and ended up being a professional speaker, traveling to 29 countries around the world, and it was a wonderful, wonderful career, met wonderful people everywhere. As a result of that, I got hired by a newspaper in South Africa. They asked me to come to South Africa to work with the newspaper, to help them get on their feet, and to provide training for leadership and customer service and so on. So I moved to South Africa, not having a clue what I was getting into, went right into the apartheid era in South Africa, worked for the chain of newspapers that supported the African National Congress to get Mandela out of prison, was there through the total election of the first free election in South Africa, where Mandela actually was elected and came out of prison and was elected. Had the opportunity to meet Mr. Mandela 2 times before he became President Mandela. And so I had this wonderful career, and then my brother got ill, and I came back to America. And I was still doing speaking. I was working for a seminar company, traveling from city to city to city doing speaking. Then one day the doctor said, "You have cancer." I was a bit in shock, and they told me that I didn't have very long to live. I needed to get my act together and be prepared for what was to come. So I kept going to different doctors until I found this one doctor who said, "Let's see if we can get you well." And I thought, well, this is the guy for me. If he wants to get me well, the rest of them just wanted to talk about treatment. In the treatment, he sent me to, this is a long, convoluted answer to your question, but in the treatment.
That's fine.
In the treatment, he sent me to ballroom dance lessons and to art school. And I thought he was crazy. Well, I understood ballroom dance lessons because that's exercise, but I didn't understand art lessons. Why did my doctor think I needed art lessons? So I asked him, and he said, "You need to sit still and be quiet for about 3 hours at a time." He said, "You're a very hyper person. You're into everything. You've got a very stressful life. We need to teach you how to meditate, and art will do that for you." So I went to the City Lights Art Gallery in Henderson, and I found a wonderful art teacher there, and he taught me how to paint, to draw, and to paint watercolors. And I discovered I had a little talent, and that was kind of a real surprise to have talent. And then he started hanging my paintings in the gallery and telling me I should continue to do that. And then people started buying my paintings. And then I thought, well, I must have some talent. So I went up to Washington State and I studied with Jeff Tift, who's one of the leading wildlife artists in South America and in North America. And I studied with Jeff, and he did American wildlife, but I wanted to do African wildlife because I had all these photographs from South Africa. And so he and I attempted to do it, and he taught me the parts of the animals and how to study them and look at them. And then we both became African wildlife painters. And so that's my answer to your question. Did it all happen at once? No, it just one thing after another after another. I ended up painting, and then someone called and said, "Could you teach a class?" And I taught a class at City Lights Gallery in Henderson. And then one day UNLV called City Lights Gallery and asked if they had an instructor, and they recommended me. So now I teach at UNLV part-time in their lifelong learning department, and I also teach at City Lights Gallery. But there's big news coming. I'm going to be opening my own studio here in Vegas. We will be teaching not only art, but writing, photography, and many of the other creative arts. And so we're pretty excited.
Well, I guess so. What a story. And wait till I tell my wife that I got to meet Wendy Ward.
Did she go to Wendy Ward School?
No, I don't think so. But, we grew up. Well, we both, she was born in Baltimore. I was born in Washington, D.C. So we grew up on the East Coast. And we had Montgomery Wards. And you either went to Montgomery Wards or you went to Sears because they were both in the mall. Yeah. And we always went to Montgomery Wards.
Yeah, it was a great store. I'm just so sorry to see that they don't have the physical stores anymore. They do still have a catalog.
Oh, do they really? Montgomery Wards and Sears kind of messed up. They were the Amazon.
They were. They were big. And, there's another story that a lot of people don't know, but Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was actually created by a gentleman in the display department at the Montgomery Ward stores.
Really?
He created, this man in the display department, he created a little comic book called Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to promote Montgomery Ward's products at Christmas time. And they gave away the comic book to children. And then one of the recording companies decided they wanted to do it. And they had a couple of recording artists that actually turned the song down before it was it Gene Autry? I'm not sure which one of the
could have been
singers came out with the original Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But it's funny that it started from a comic book at Montgomery Ward's.
Yeah, that's great. Boy, these are some good memories, Judi. Thank you so much.
Steve, Addie here with today's holiday-themed research break. When Judi mentioned Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, I thought, surely everyone knows that story. Then I started digging and discovered that Rudolph wasn't created by a toy company, a movie studio, or even Santa himself. He was actually created in 1939 by a copywriter named Robert L. May, who worked for Montgomery Ward, the famous department store. Montgomery Ward wanted a Christmas giveaway booklet for children, and Robert May was asked to come up with an original holiday character. Inspired by his own childhood experiences of feeling a little different, he created a young reindeer with a glowing red nose who was teased by the other reindeer but ultimately became the hero of the story. The booklet was a huge success. In its first year alone, Montgomery Ward distributed more than 2 million copies. But the story gets even better. A few years later, Robert May's brother-in-law, songwriter Johnny Marks, turned the story into a song. In 1949, cowboy singer Gene Autry recorded it, and the song sold millions of copies, becoming one of the most popular Christmas songs ever written. So the next time you hear Rudolph guiding Santa's sleigh through the fog, remember that he started as a marketing project for a department store, which, if you think about it, is a pretty good reminder that you never know when a small creative idea might turn into something that lasts for generations. This has been another Addie Research Break, proving once again that behind every famous story is another story waiting to be discovered. Now back to Steve and Judi.
One of the things you were saying, and I always talk about it, that we have, and I'm older, and we have people our age, we have a hard time patting ourselves on the back. And I think you mentioned somewhere that I've heard that you don't wave your own flag enough over the years. I mean, is that just something that creative people just have to deal with and learn, or?
Well, when we were growing up, we were always told not to brag about ourselves, not to push ourselves, not to be too noisy, not to talk too much. Especially, I was told, to be a lady, to sit back and be quiet because people didn't like loudmouthed women. And so I think that kind of kept us from promoting ourselves as much as we could have. And when I worked for Montgomery Ward's, they used to send a lot of articles about me to the newspaper because they were big advertisers. And so the newspaper would put in whatever articles they sent, and they would send all these articles about me. And one day I saw that one of the articles had been returned from a local newspaper with a note written on it that said, "This woman promotes herself too much." I was just devastated because I didn't do it. Somebody else sent it, and then they said I promoted myself. So I was like, "Oh, I need to back off. I need to not be too visible, And so I think that's something that's really changed with young people today. They really like being visible. They get out there in front, and people talk about how they should be visible, how they should promote themselves, how they should be an influencer on social media. And they make a lot of money promoting themselves and other people and products. So I don't know, maybe I was just raised incorrectly, or maybe it was just the times. I don't know.
I don't know. I think we were raised fine, to tell you the truth. It is interesting, though. Nancy Good, who's an artist, and I saw your cat there crawling on the behind you.
That's why I picked her up, because she would be going back and forth, driving us all crazy in a minute.
Oh, she won't drive me crazy. But Nancy has said that, and especially for the podcast for me, she said, put something on social media every day. So I try to do that.
Yes, that's a good, smart move, because you got to be out there in front of everybody.
So you've spoken in 29 countries, and of course you were in South Africa for a bit. What has traveling internationally taught you about humanity and creativity? Are we doing things here right, or?
Oh, I've just learned so much by traveling internationally. I was exposed to so many different cultures, and that's what's so fascinating, that people, people of all cultures seem to have some of the same problems, but we all have different issues. We all have different ways of believing, but it's just amazing. I spent some time in Dubai, and I was fascinated with the amount of wealth that's in that country, as opposed to some of the other African countries that are very, very poor and starving. And yet the people, both the wealthy and the people who are living in shacks, were just as gracious. They were just as wonderful to me in all parts of that country, and well, that continent, actually. There's many countries on the continent of Africa.
So, yeah, certainly I've heard some stories because we've interviewed some guests, who were there working in some small rural villages. And, there was one that she taught art, and they painted on whatever they could. If there was a box, a piece of slip of paper, they painted on it. So they were still doing art.
Well, and the creativity in some of those places comes from the lack of what they have. They have to work with just what they have. So maybe their creativity is wooden carvings. Maybe it's soapstone carvings. Maybe it's painting on local buildings. They don't have. We're so spoiled in America. We have every kind of art supply there is possible out there to use. And in addition, we have clean water almost every single day of our lives, and we have food to eat. And so we don't have to be as creative as they do. But it's a shame in America how many people come to me for art classes, and they walk in the door, and the first thing they say is, "Now, I'm not creative. I can't draw a stick figure. I don't know how to do anything." And I'm like, "You're here. That's the first thing. And if you decide to come to art class, you've got to be open. It doesn't matter if you can't draw a stick figure. In fact, I hope you don't draw stick figures, because we don't teach that in our school. We teach people how to draw live people. And and I teach them how to do animals, because I'm big into animals. But I just think it's such a shame. I hear so many stories about when I was in first grade, my teacher threw my picture in the trash, or when I was in school, everybody's picture got to go on the wall for the parent-teachers night except for mine. They said it wasn't good enough. Now, who would ever tell a child their picture isn't good enough? It's just sad, because any kind of creative endeavor is any effort. It's wonderful. I had a couple of children come into my class recently. It was kind of a mistake how they got into my class at UNLV. One was 6 and one was 11. And they don't normally take those children in the lifelong learning courses, but they accidentally got registered, and they were there. And they were wonderful. Those 2 kids were better than all the adults put together, because no matter what I said, they tried it. They didn't have hang-ups. They didn't say, "Oh, I can't do it," or "I'm scared," or, people are going to make fun. They just tried whatever I asked them to do, and they turned out fabulous work. And it's a shame that as we get older, we seem to get more hang-ups. We get scared. We're afraid to try new things. We're afraid, what if we make a mistake? What if we ruin this piece of paper? It's only a piece of paper. Throw it away if you ruin it, or turn it over. But we just have so many hang-ups. It's really sad.
Well, and the 6-year-olds or the younger kids probably gave your adult students a little spark.
They did. They really did.
So there was some intergenerational mentorship going on there, whether they knew it or not.
Yes, and their grandparents came with them, which was really fun.
Oh, that's great.
grandfather and the grandmother and both of the kids, and we really enjoyed it. I enjoyed having them in class. They were on time. They had their supplies. They didn't talk back. They just did what I asked them to do. They cleaned up their mess. You know, a lot of adults want to talk back about everything. They think they should do it differently than what I tell them.
Oh, well, that's what a great story. So what was, if we can go back a little bit, what was 6-year-old Judi doing?
Oh, when I was 6 years old, my mother said I was standing on a wash tub giving speeches to the animals.
Were you really? Okay, so you knew what you're going to do right away.
In fact, she even had a picture of it. And I never, ever realized when I was that young that one day I would be a professional speaker. No.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. And it's great that your mom saved that.
Yep, I have the picture of me standing on the wash tub and my little sunsuit out there just talking away to the animals.
Oh, that's why. Did they listen?
Yeah, I've been talking my whole life. When I first started speaking professionally, I would go to the beach and I would stand on the beach and talk to all the birds, and they all looked at me. So it was nice to have all those birds just sitting there watching me while I did my practice on my speeches.
So now you say that the lady that I interviewed yesterday, she's a singer, and when she was little, she was raised on a farm, and she had to go out at night with a flashlight and check and see if the chickens had laid any eggs that had got. She'd have to pick them up, and she said she would go out there with her flashlight, and the flashlight would be her microphone, and she would sing to the chickens, and none of them would. She said otherwise. Her siblings would make fun of her and tell her how bad she was, she said, but she didn't have to hear anything from the chickens.
No, they didn't say anything bad to us. You know, that's cool. So, I admire them for that.
Great stories. So reinvention seems to be one of your recurring themes. And I'd like to say, for me too, because I started this podcast when I was 70. And I realized I was an artist maybe when I was around 70. Want to talk about reinvention?
I find it's necessary. I keep changing my life. You know, it's like I'm doing one thing, and then before long I'm doing another. I didn't start out to be a ghostwriter. I started out to write things for newspapers, and then later I ended up with my own magazine and publishing the magazine, and then I wrote many, many, many articles for that, as well as for a lot of other magazines. In fact, I write for your magazine out there where you live in Mesquite. I write for your View On magazine regularly. There's 2 articles from me every time it comes out.
And that's how we got connected. I saw one of those.
You did?
Yeah, and I said, I've got to get her on the podcast.
Oh, well, good. See? Good exposure. And so I just never thought I would be later ghostwriting people's stories and things, but because I've written so many books and I've won some major awards with my books, that people had said, would you help me with my book? So then I started helping other people with their books, and I find that it's fascinating. I absolutely love helping people write their stories. They bring me all kinds of, one lady brought me a whole box full of handwritten notes, a big old cardboard box. And she said, can you help me make a book out of this? And I'm like, I don't know. But, you know, it's like a puzzle. You take all the pieces of their lives and you put them together, and then before long you have a book. I find it fascinating. So, yeah, I like to reinvent myself. I like to do new things. I like to teach art. I love my art students. My art students are like my family. My family's all dead and gone. And so my art students are like my family. And year before last, I had 2 knee replacements and a hip replacement. So most of the year I was out of work. I was laid up in bed a lot of time. I was at home by myself. My art students actually made a schedule, and every night for a year, one of them came to my house and made sure I had dinner and got to bed okay. I mean, that's like amazing. I love those people. They're just, the artists are the best people in the world. They're so creative and kind, and they will just reach out and help each other. And I just love them. And then I love the other part of my life, being by myself and putting people's puzzles together in their little books that we come up with for them. But it's it's just I have to reinvent myself every now. When I got the 2 knee replacements and the hip replacement, I can't stand up 8 hours in front of an audience and talk all day long anymore. But I can sit down here and do it. So I can do some online things, online courses, and I can stand up. I can walk good. I luckily had great doctors, but I can't stand up for 8-9 hours at a time and then run to an airport and jump on an airplane and go to the next city. That's crazy. I used to be in a different city every day, and I thought that was a great way to live. In fact, I was more at home sleeping in a bed in a hotel than I was in my own home. I'd get home and couldn't sleep because it was unfamiliar, But when the pandemic hit and then I was having all those surgeries, then my life just changed. I mean, things happen in life and your life does take changes, and you've got to be willing to adapt to it, because if you don't adapt, what are you going to do? Sit around and die? Sit around and feel sorry for yourself? I know people my age that are sitting around just waiting for, when am I going to go to heaven or hell or wherever I'm going?
Yeah, and that's a shame. We're trying to put together, I think you were talking about it, creative aging. We're trying to put together with all the different organizations in Mesquite some creative aging, because just like I know that there's kids in high school who just do nothing and they need a spark to get them going. And us, our elder people, we need a spark too.
I'm actually teaching art classes at a couple of the senior citizen homes here in Vegas now, and it's really amazing. These people love their art classes, and it's so good to get interested in something again, to be creating and feeling like you're accomplishing something.
Yeah, because once you start thinking about art, I mean, that's all I think about.
I know.
So I would hope that happens to them too, that when they go back to their room, and I don't know what they do, just sit there, but hopefully they're thinking about art and they're creating things.
Yes. And you know what? When they go back to their room, they can take a canvas with them and a little bit of paint. And if they want to practice in their room, they certainly can. And I just love having them in the classes, because they're exposing themselves to a new world. They're exposing themselves to things that many of them haven't ever done before. They can
be surprised. Look what I can do.
I know. And it's so thrilling when people can do those things. I come from a family of artists, and I never wanted to be one of them. I thought they were all kind of eccentric. And but they were good artists. My sisters, my mother, my brother, they were all artists. And I just never had done it until I got cancer. I just wanted to be a writer. That was all I wanted to be. But art is so good for your health. I mean, for your mental health. To sit there and paint and be quiet for a period of time, you just get lost in it. You just get into that other world of painting and or sculpting or whatever your art is. It's just it's so good for your head, and it's good for your health.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's good for your health. So, do you want to tell us about the Creative Corner? That's your new place, right? What you're building?
It was going to be on a corner, but actually it didn't work out. So the new place is called the Center for Creative Expression. So it's not on the corner anymore. It's actually in a professional building, and it's a lovely facility. We have 2,000 square feet of facility, and we're going to be teaching art, watercolor, acrylic, impressionism, expressionism, abstract. We're going to be teaching Zentangle. We're going to be doing some paper art. We'll also have photographers that are teaching photography classes. I will be teaching memoir writing and nonfiction and fiction writing. And it's just going to be an amazing place, because we'll be having like once a month receptions where we'll feature one artist and one author and one photographer, where they'll each have about 10 minutes to talk about what they do and tell people about their work, and we'll feature them and they can invite all their friends and have people come in, and we'll have a center for creative people where they can connect and be together. And we'll have open paint days where artists can just come in and paint on the days that they have time to paint. They don't have to be in a class. They'll be able to paint. For my students who are in classes, we're going to have a designated creative space for them so they can leave their artwork there and not have to drag it back and forth home. And while it's wet, we'll have a place for them to put things to be there when they come back next week. And we'll have coffee, of course, and snacks and things like that. We're going to have authors do book signings, and it's just going to be an amazing place. And I've been so busy putting it together for months and months and months that now that it's actually becoming a reality, and it looks like we'll be moving in August 1st, but we're not going to do our grand opening until September. And so, it's in a professional building, which at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to go in a professional building or not. But then, I teach it at night. I teach a lot of times from 6 to 9 o'clock at night. And in some of the places where I've been teaching, they don't have security. And if I have young women that are leaving at that time of night, I want to be sure they're secure. Even young men. I mean, I want to be sure that the people that come are safe. And the nice thing about the professional building where I'm going, we've got 24-hour security. We've got underground secured parking. We've got a really super clean area. We have 2 men's bathrooms and 2 ladies' bathrooms, and they get cleaned every day. And we don't have to share them, anymore, where a lot of the art places where I teach, you have to share the bathrooms and you never know who's in there or who's not in there. And so it's just, it's all the things I kind of like dreamed of. And then I found a place downtown, and then it didn't work out. It was going to be the Creative Corner, and then the people decided to keep it for their own staff rather than to rent it like they said they would. So then I found another place that I really liked, which was a great cottage, but way too expensive. And then I found this place, and I really like this place, and I think it offers so much. Plus, it's bigger than the others were. It's got a really nice area that's got a sink in there. With artists, you've got to have water. You can't be in a building where there's no water. And a lot of these commercial buildings, they don't have water. They have a restroom down the way, but you have to go down there. For years at UNLV, we were in that school on Tropicana, that elementary school on Tropicana, and we had to go over 2 buildings to get water. We actually had to walk over.
Really?
2 buildings to the restroom to get water. So water is a big thing with me. I have to have water in the art studio. So when I found this one, and it's got this really nice counter with a big, lovely stainless steel sink and water right in this room. And the room's got plenty of room to put tables in there where we can cut and paste and use paper cutters and use projectors and things. I said, yes, this is it, because I need that for the students. I want it to be as convenient for them to be as creative as possible. I don't want them out at night walking around other buildings to get water or to go to the restroom. I want them to be safe.
So, Judi, what would you say to someone standing outside your new studio doors, feeling intimidated to walk in?
Oh, if I saw them there, I'd go out and say, hello, come on in, let's talk. Let me show you around. I mean, if they feel intimidated, they just need somebody to be kind and to show them what we have and to let them see what we did in the beginning as well as what you do later on. I always take my first paintings to art class, to new students, so that when new students come in, I show them, I say, see this? This was my first painting. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. If you could do that, I can do that. And then I show them what I do today versus what I did then. And I say, look, you just have to practice. You have to get in here and do it. Yeah, I mean, you don't become a good artist by sitting looking at a picture. You become a good artist by practicing.
Yes,
However,
you do.
I will say this, I've had a couple art teachers that have made me look at pictures for a while. I had one that drugged me outside, showed me a tree. He had me by the arm. He took me out and he said, "Do you see that tree?" I said, "Yeah." "Do you see the bark on that tree?" "Yeah." He said, "Does your bark look like that bark?" I said, "No." He said, "Then you stand here and look at it until you can figure out what it looks like." Because people don't realize that, it's about shapes. We have to look at shapes. And if we can see the shape, we should be able to draw it or paint it.
Yeah, but your bark can look like your bark. It doesn't have to look like somebody else's bark, right?
It sure doesn't. And mine doesn't.
So do storytelling and creativity help people heal?
I believe it does, yes. Because storytelling, we all have a story. Each and every one of us has a story. And so when we can tell it to people who are interested, who are sharing, you're sharing time. And sharing time with another person is so important. We need to learn to love each other and to share things and listen to people. And so when people can tell a story about their life, we should listen to them. I remember when I was a young girl, my mother would tell the same story about walking to school both ways, uphill in the snow with no shoes, and we would hear it over and over and over. And what I learned was it wasn't about the story. It wasn't about the lesson in the story. It was about sharing time. She wanted to be with me, and that's what she knew to talk about. And so consequently, I had to learn not to be a smart aleck and say, "Oh, I've already heard that before," or finish it for her. I had to learn to be interested and be interested in her as a person. And that's what's so important with older people today. We need to learn to be interested in them and listen to them, because everyone has a story, and some people have fabulous stories to tell, and you won't get to hear it, you won't get to know it if you don't listen.
Do you think listening's become a lost art?
Oh, yes. Everybody wants to talk. Listening has 3 steps to it. And the first thing is really being there. It means shutting up your mouth and just really be there and pay attention. And then the second part is repeating back what you heard the person say. Because so oftentimes we misconstrue what someone said. So we need to follow along, and then we need to repeat back. So we want to be there, we want to follow along, let people know we're following, and then repeat back. That's it. That's listening. And it's amazing how few people do that.
Before we get back to today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the 2 new books that have recently found their way into the world. The Art of Noticing is a collection of observations, essays, and reflections inspired by years of photography, podcast conversations, travel, public lands, and the simple practice of paying attention. It's a reminder that wonder is often hiding in plain sight if we slow down long enough to notice. My newest release, Sandcastle Windows, is my first work of fiction, set between present-day Nevada and the Paris art world of the 1870s. It explores a question that has fascinated me for years. What if you could step inside a future memory? It's a story about art, friendship, time, and the moments that shape our lives long before we realize their importance. Both books share a common thread, the belief that ordinary moments often become the memories we treasure most. To learn more about The Art of Noticing and Sandcastle Windows and my other children's books, visit my Amazon author page. And now let's get back to the Art Box. If you could host a dinner party with 3 creative people from any point in history, who would be sitting at the table?
3 people, creative people in history. If I could host a dinner party, probably Monet. I would like to have Monet there, and I would like to have my mother there, and I would like to have Nelson Mandela there. They're all creative people.
Yeah, that sounds like a good dinner party.
It would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yes.
We could learn a lot about all kinds of creativity. Now, my mother, the reason I say my mother was a mechanical draftswoman in World War II. And she was one of the first mechanical draftswomen in World War II. And she was a designer of the B-36 and the B-52. She worked on the design crew there for that. And the B-52 still flies today.
Yes, it does.
And as you know, my mother, that was 1944. Before that. It was like 42, I think, when those planes were being designed. So she was way ahead of her time. And then I think I get all this nomad stuff from her because she was an interior designer. She made draperies for some of the major showrooms in Las Vegas. She designed costumes for entertainers and made them. She could make anything out of anything. My mother used to always say everything is figure outable. If you if you just look at it, you can figure it out. It's figure outable. And so don't think it's impossible, because there's a way. There's always a way. And she could. I mean, if the toaster broke back when we didn't have the ability to go get another one for $17, if the toaster broke, she took it apart and put it back together. If the TV didn't work, she'd figure out how to take the tubes out and put it back together. I mean, she was amazing. And so I think she was one of the most creative people that I've ever known in my whole life, or even known of. She could do anything. When I was living in Africa, this lady was telling me about a professional speaker that had been over there from America. And she said, that lady said that when she was a child, they made her clothes out of flour sacks. She said, we wish we had flour sacks to make our clothes out of.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember when my mom made clothes out of those big sacks that rice came in, or that pinto beans came in. They came in big 20-pound sacks of stuff, and she would cut those up and make things out of them for clothes. And then when the clothes wore out, she made quilts out of them. She cut them up and made a quilt. So it was like she always made something from everything.
If I handed you a giant blank canvas and said, paint what resilience feels like, what colors would appear first?
Turquoise, burnt sienna, and gold.
That's three good choices. Do you want me to ask you why, or we're just going to leave it as that and let people creatively think why?
They're my three favorite colors.
Okay.
So if I have any canvas, you can always bet there's probably going to be some turquoise, burnt sienna, and gold somewhere on it.
Because I think this is one of the most important words, which I'm here at the STEAM Center, and one of the things we try to tell these younger kids, we try to make them curious about things. So what are you still curious about?
Oh, I'm curious about just about everything. Let's see. I'm curious about mixing colors. I'm curious about AI. I'm absolutely fascinated with AI. I think that's exciting. I'm curious about God. I'm curious about how things are created and why things grow. And I'm curious about why rich men didn't find me. And I'm joking. Oh, goodness. I'm a curious person. That's an interesting question you ask. Yeah. In fact, we were just talking about that at the art gallery, that one of the things that artists need is curiosity, because they need to look at things in different ways. They need to see what's under something or in something or around it, or maybe go out and see a crack in the sidewalk and kind of put a frame around it and say, how would that make an abstract painting, just
Yes.
from the crack and things. There's so many ways that you can be curious.
Well, thank you. I think that is like the most important word in the human language.
Well, I think it's definitely one of them.
So do you want to talk about AI since you brought it up?
Oh, yeah. What would you like to talk about? I'm just fascinated with it. I find it amazing that it can remember so much about me, that each time I type something in, it just remembers it. And then it's got that nice place for you to do your different projects. So everything that about one thing can be in there. And it remembers. You don't have to retype something later on. So it'll remember it. And it's funny because I was telling it the other day that, I've been working on putting this creative center together, and I had it do the numbers for me because I wanted to know, can I pay the rent and can I replace the floor in the place because I'm going to have to do that, and how many students will it take to pay for all this stuff, and how much am I going to need in art supplies, and I'm trying to do all the numbers, and so I put everything into AI, and it just does it in a matter of a few seconds. It just, there it is. And then it tells you how many students you need to have and how many founder people that would like sponsor scholarships and things, how many of those people you need. It tells you, what kind of creative people you need to come in and put the place together. It keeps telling you all this stuff that it would take months to research, just months. And it's there. And I'm just like, wow, I don't think we have to be afraid of AI. I think we have to be afraid of not educating ourselves to use it, because we need to use it for good, for powerful. Yes, I heard people say AI could be used for evil, and probably if you are an evil person, you could do that. But I don't think that's the purpose. I think the purpose is to help us be more efficient and to do things faster and to do things correctly. And I always ask it, I write a letter to someone and then I'll put it into AI and I say, would you make this more tactful? Because I know I'm not tactful. So I want it to be more tactful, and it will help me with the wording, and that's good. And if I'm depressed, I'll say to AI, oh, I'm having a little depression here. Could you tell me how wonderful I am, because I need to feel better about myself? And it just writes me a nice letter telling me what a great person I am and how qualified I am and why I should be successful. I mean, what's not to love about AI?
It's a great tool. I haven't heard about that last thing, but I will use that next time I'm a little down on myself.
Yeah, just say, I'm feeling a little down. I'd just like you to tell me, how to keep myself boosted up, and tell me how wonderful you think I am. Man, I'm telling you, it just tells you. It's great. My one girlfriend was having a fight with her boyfriend, and she was arguing with him on text. And so she put the whole text into AI, the whole conversation into AI. And she said, what do you think about this? And AI came back and said, get rid of the boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm speechless. Speechless.
It's amazing. It really is amazing.
Yeah, what you said is, I don't think we should be afraid of it. We need to learn how to use it because it's a great tool.
It is. It's a great tool.
So, and my wife, she's like, you're going overboard here. When I was in here at the Steam Center yesterday, I was doing something. I was looking at my email. I got an email that said that I could make a song from AI. And I'm like, shut up, this can't make a song. So I went ahead and pressed the button, and it wasn't spam. It took me to a place, and it asked me, what did I want my song about? And it gave me some different, did I want it jazz? Did I want it soft rock? I got to make choices there, and asked me to put in some keywords. So I put in stuff about my last book I wrote, and write a song about my book. And it gave me 2 songs, and I just think they're both beautiful. And I sent them to my wife. She's like, you had AI do this. I said, yes, I did. And I can't believe, because I didn't think it did that. But in any case, there's AI. Thank you for your thoughts on AI.
It can do amazing things.
So people shouldn't be scared.
You want to hear about my books?
Yes, let's hear about your books. And also where you can buy them.
Yeah. Well, I normally write self-help books. And my first self-help book was entitled You Are More Than Enough, Every Woman's Guide to Purpose, Passion, and Power.
I think I've seen that. Yeah, I think I've seen that at our Women's Center here in Mesquite.
You might. It became a bestseller. It did very, very, very well. It's about 16 years old now, and it's still selling, which is amazing. So recently I did a follow-up to it called You Are More Than You Think You Are, and it's for men and women both.
Oh, okay.
And, and it's kind of cool because it takes you one step from you are more than enough up to you are more than you think you are. So those are the self-help books. I write a lot of self-help books. I've written 27 self-help books. But then last year when I was laying up in bed with the knee replacements and stuff, I thought, I wonder if I could write a novel. I've always wanted to write a novel, but I never did. I was afraid of writing the characters and how would you put them into scenes and so on. So I studied with my computer while I was laying up there in bed. And then I wrote this book called Chronicles of a Divided Land. And it's a story about apartheid in South Africa. Of course, I lived through it, so it was a little easier to write. I didn't have to do quite as much research. Did have to do research because I wanted to be technically correct. It actually won an award. You can see the award sticker here. It was the best historical fiction of last year from the International Impact Awards.
Well, that was pretty good considering you're sitting there waiting on your knees to get better, huh?
I know that I won an award with my first novel. Are you kidding me? I was like so excited. And then the girls in my art class were telling me that they don't have any romance anymore. Like they say, oh, Miss Moreo, when you were growing up, men opened doors for you and they sent flowers and brought candy. They said, we don't have any of that. They just send us a text and want to get pictures of our body parts and stuff. And we don't have any romance. And they said, the only romance we have is to read romance novels. They said, could you write a romance novel? I said, I don't know. Could you try? I said, yeah, I'll write you guys a romance novel. So I wrote this book for them. It's entitled On the Corner of Katzia and Klein. And it's a story about a female that was on vacation and she went on to the corner of Katzia and Klein and she met a man on that corner and she ended up falling madly in love with him. And they had this big love affair in South Africa. So that was my step into the novel world, because mostly I write things like I have about 10 friends who lost their husbands in the last few years, and they sit around and feel sorry for themselves and talk about how life used to be. So I wrote them a book entitled Focus Forward. So it's about yesterday's story doesn't have to be today's headline.
Okay.
So that it's a book on how to move forward when you've had loss or when things didn't go the way you wanted them to, when life has been a disappointment. How do you move forward? So it's a kind book. It sounds like it's a snarky book, but it's not. It's a kind book. And then I wrote this one, Fear Never Sleeps, for people who have a problem with being afraid of things and they let fear hold them back from things. And I wrote this one mainly for my art students. How to get past the fear and just do it anyway. That's the important thing. So those are the kind of books I write. I write mainly self-help books. And I get a lot of ideas from AI. I say, what do you think people need to hear today? And they say, oh, you should write about fear. And I think, oh, fear, that sounds good.
Where can you pick up your books at?
Oh, they're on Amazon.
Okay.
And they're in all the major bookstores. You can get them any of those places, or you can get them on my website, judimoreo.com. Yeah, I have judimoreo.com, and then I also have my artwork on judimoreoartist.com. People can reach me, Judi, at judimoreo.com, and it's JUDIMOREO. So it's Judi at judimoreo.com. They can reach me, and I'll give them all the information, and they can. When we get open, I'll send everybody an invitation and they can come and see the art and eat some food and listen to people talk about their books. And it's going to be quite the gathering.
I'll make sure that I come. I hope, if I'm here.
Yeah, I'm going to invite you.
What's inspired you recently?
I think what's inspired me this week has been standing in that new office space, that new studio space, and just looking at what all it can be. Because I look at the dirty old brown carpet that's in it now and the dirty walls, and I think, oh, when this is painted, it's going to be so amazing. And when we get this floor out of here and put the new floor down, it's going to be so gorgeous. And then I got so excited about it that my landlord even agreed that he would give me all new vertical blinds. So I was pretty excited.
Wow, that's a nice landlord. Judi, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. I'll look forward to seeing you in August, and I'll be picking up some of those books as well.
And thank you so much for having me as a guest. This has really been fun. You're a great interviewer, and I've just enjoyed it so much.
Okay, Judi, thank you so much. Have a great Tuesday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Artbox Podcast. We're recording from our home studio inside the Mesquite Steam Center, right here in the beautiful Mojave Desert, where creativity and curiosity meet under wide open skies. From the written word and poetry to collage, brush art, pencil, ink, fabric, and pottery, from theater and song to archaeology in our public lands, we celebrate the many ways creativity shows up in the world around us. You can find us on Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Boomplay, or your favorite podcast app. We'd love to hear from you. Find us at theartboxpodcast.com. Drop us a note anytime at artboxvv@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends so they can join the conversation too. Most importantly, take a moment to follow and support the artists and creative souls who join us here, because their stories are what make the Artbox come alive. This is Daisy, and until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and keep sharing your story.